Hello folks, it is time to see some extremely hot and spicy hobby hot takes. It's going to be awesome today. Kind of dreading what people are going to come up with, but we'll see. There was a brief that I gave to you a little while ago, but before we do that, if you like what I do, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and like the sacrifice that I'm making here, because I was, during my break, reading the deluxe edition of the Berserk manga. That is right, the big black and red leather-bound volumes. They are awesome, and I was having a good time reading them, but I thought, no, sit down, North, record your video, right? We can always read this later. So I'm sacrificing for you lot. I'm sacrificing. So if you like what I do, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to see the numbers going up. So, the brief for this video that I gave you was, and I quote, "What is your Warhammer/Warhammer 40,000 hot take? What opinion do you have that you think will get you a lot of heat? You can expand this to other wargames if you so wish." So, we had 92 comments on this. So, I may not get through them all today. If I don't, I will do a part 2 either later this week or early next week. Probably, I'll do part 1 this Tuesday and part 2 next Tuesday. How's that? Alright. Dominic is first up, and he says, "My hot take that has actually gotten me a lot of flack in my local club is, if you're a casual player of 40k, don't limit yourself to the latest rule set. Play Rogue Trader 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or any edition you like, and play it with whatever minis you like. I've played 2nd edition with Primaris Marines and 8th edition with Old Metal Marines. Play what you want to play with, and you'll find people wanted to play it as well." I'm imagining the flack you got wasn't that you were playing Rogue Trader or 2nd edition or whatever, it was that you were playing Primaris Marines in earlier editions. Those guys who like their earlier editions are really, really protective. And they don't like Primaris Marines for the most part. Also, hot take number 2. Be the weirdo you are and play in public. Take your game outside. Open the garage door, or set up in the backyard, or hell, host a game day with your friends in the local park. Okay, well, that's not a hot take. I think that's a really good take. It requires a lot of balls, though. Because a lot of people are ashamed of being Warhammer fans. I know, but it's true. A lot of people are quite like, how am I saying this? They're not ashamed of it, they're just embarrassed, right? They don't want, they think, what will people think if they walk past and they see me playing with toy soldiers? You know what I mean? What they don't realise is, a lot of the dudes walking past will be very jealous of you, going, wow, look at that dude. Look, he's playing like, he's allowed to play these games in public with his friends. That's so cool. I've got to remain cool to try and get women. Oh my god, right? And a lot of the women walking past will go, "Oh, isn't that nice? They've got a hobby and they're enjoying it. That's cool. Oh, that guy has friends. That's cool, right?" No one cares. No one cares that you play Warhammer. So, go ahead. Do it in public. Not do it in public, you know what I'm saying? Drunken Deer says, "Titan-sized units have ruined 40k on the tabletop." He got quite a lot of likes as well. Okay, yeah, I can see that. Whenever I see someone turning up with knights, I think, wow. I think 2 things. Number 1, wow, those knights are really cool looking. And number 2, that must be a very lazy hobbyist. That's all I think. That guy couldn't be arsed collecting an army, you know? He just couldn't be bothered. So that's why he's got knights. Yeah, anyway. Blonde Guyification says, "Games Workshop should push more narrative crusade play for casual and let tournament players play completely separately. As someone who plays both, it'd be nice to have one game mode with less rules and more dice rolling." Yeah. Dude, I've advocated for this so much. There should be 2 forms of 40k. I've had pushback on this, but I think there should be 2 forms of 40k. We should have your tournament-style 40k, which is very much, a friend of mine, Matt, I love him to pieces. He's like a brother to me. He was at Exile Fest. I think he came 4th, which is, congratulations to him. Anyway, so he invited me to play a 2,000-point game of 40k the other day, and I said to him, "Mate, I love you to bits, but I would rather boil my balls in tar than play 10 minutes of 10th edition 40k at 2,000 points. 2,000 points is hell on earth. No. I'm not doing it. I'm absolutely not doing it. So yeah, I absolutely think that there should be 2 forms of 40k. If you do that, if you bring out a narrative style, crusade style 40k, I will get into that. You will get me back. In fact, there will be a lot of players who will come back. And I think you'll be surprised at the numbers. I think the numbers of players playing crusade narrative will dwarf that playing tournament level play. It will absolutely dwarf it. If you want 40k to be more mainstream and to be more accessible in a good way, create 2 forms. Create tournament 40k and narrative 40k. Narrative 40k is for dudes like me who want to just revisit when they were kids and where they were throwing their Eldar models at Space Marines and having the Space Marines just die. You know, yeah, just let us have fun. All right. Not everything's about, I've got a -1 to hit because of this differential down there, and what's your leadership is -6.7. No, dude, I couldn't give less of a monkey's left bollock, alright? I just want to see things blow up. Disco Kevin says, I'd rather sit and paint with a mate than play a game of 40k. Fair enough. Lorenzo Crow says, Knights shouldn't be a standalone army. Instead, they should just be available as allied units for Imperium and Chaos armies. Well, that goes into what I said before. And that is that, you know, whenever I see a Knight army, I'm thinking, okay, you've not collected an army. You've collected 2 units, 2 models you think are pretty cool, and that's your army. And that's all power to you. Those are very cool models, but still, right? Yeah, I don't think I'm fighting an army. I think I'm fighting a kaiju, which is not really that fun. It's not as fun as you'd think, anyway. The other Lucy says, the 40k you fell in love with died a long time ago. Edit, I'm using the royal U. Yeah, as in me, as in North. Yeah, I don't disagree. A lot of the complaints I have on this channel of me talking about 40k are lamenting the fact that 40k isn't what it used to be. It isn't. Neither is Games Workshop. I don't think that's this isn't an old man shouting at cloud thing, by the way. This isn't that, right? Because it's true. It's empirically true. It's actually true, right? This isn't me going, oh, back in my day. No, it's literally true. 40k is way different now than what it was in 7th, 8th edition, 6th edition, 5th edition, when a lot of us guys were in our 40k prime, quote unquote, right? Those were the days. Those were really the days. If you'd have, in my ideal world, the Primaris glow up would be an armor change. Listen, we just changed the size of the armor. That's it, right? And that would have happened in 7th edition. That would have been peak 40k to me. Like peak. They would have gotten, if they got rid of detachments and brought in Primaris Space Marines as just a Mark 10 armor, that's it. Normal Space Marines and Mark 10 armor, I would have been like, yes, this is it. This is 40k. End it now, please. Just this is the edition. Leave it like this. Since then, 40k has gone way, way off the rails. I've gone on record as saying I really liked 8th edition, and I did. I really liked 8th edition. I thought it was super easy to get into. It was super easy to teach, you know. So a blending of 7th and 8th would be the ideal scenario for me. If we're only having 1 game system, I would like 2, but if we're only getting 1, that would be the combination I would go with. And of course, you know, not bastardizing the lore would also be very nice, just to accommodate you having new Space Marine models. Just saying. Yeah, that's basically where I am with it, dude. That's where I am. Where are we right now? Okay, cool. But I'm very well aware that, you know, 40k died a long time ago, at least the one that I like anyway. Athletic Alcoholic says, 40k was better when we had the Force organization chart and when secondaries didn't exist. I agree. Dude, I am completely on side. Games were immersive. They looked and felt like an actual battle with structured armies and primary objectives everybody would fight over. Dude, every single game mode I designed for OPR is that. If you played in Exile Fest, you'll know what I mean. Every single mission had very clear objectives, and there were only 2 or 3 secondaries you could get. That's it. You know? And those secondaries would literally be Slay the Warlord, Line Breaker, things like that. Do you know what I'm saying? It was very clear, and with those clear rules, both generals had really tactical decisions to make. There was one guy who did really well, because he got a big beefy unit with lots of wounds and put it on the central objective, called King of the Hill, King of the Mountain, when the entire thing was about taking the central objective. You know, he's very, very clever in the way that he did that. He went and took it and said, come at me, bro, and he won a lot of games doing that. But that's you looking at the battlefield and saying, this is what I'm going to do. You know, I'm going to do this, you know. I completely agree with you. In the current format, armies look like a goofy mix of random units, and the secondary objectives often have units running around doing weird things that they would never do normally. Rather than an actual battle, games these days are more arcadey. This honestly has driven me into other games. 40k lost the entire appeal of what got me started. The immersion. I agree. Absolutely. And this was Yancey, by the way, who's sent in a few Hobby Nightmares, so thank you, Yancey. That's had the most likes so far. I didn't even see that. That's got like quite a lot of likes on it. So yeah, dude, I'm completely there with you. Completely. The reason why people are starving for Old World is because it actually plays like a battle. They're able to sell decades-old sculpts because Old World plays like a battle. Quite literally plays like a battle. You know? Anyway. Lord Commander Shuran says, one-page rules needs a single layer of additional rules. Add a simple faction rule for every faction. Does not need to be complex, but something to add identity to a faction, because as it is, due to them being balanced universally, and an army creator existing, there is essentially only a single, gameplay-wise, faction. The only thing differing one from the other are the models, which are agnostic, so not actually, and lore, which does nothing for gameplay since there are no universal rules for factions based on lore, but only special rules that can be put on any unit with the army builder to make a perfectly legal and balanced army. Yeah, I think what you're talking about there, Lord Shuran, it is true, but looking at the fun people had at Exile Fest, nobody was talking about how, oh, wait, you know, so your army does this and my army does that, but they're the same rules, really, but just a few things changed around. Everybody was absolutely having fun. Do you know what I mean? No one was saying that. Like, and this is, you know, we're way down the line in terms of events that I've seen OPR being played at, and no one said anything like this, because in the moment, you're not feeling that. My Blood Angels for OPR play very differently to Necrons, right? They go in, they smash, they're really good at deep striking and charging from deep striking, right? Okay? Grey Knights play very differently to Blood Angels on another proviso, right? They do a lot of wounds to big models. They are very, very quick, very, very hard hitting. Orcs play differently to all three, even though they do similar things. Orcs get a hell of a load of attacks when they're charging in, things like that. So they are different. They're not quite as the same as you're saying. You're being very extreme there, saying there's only actually one faction with slightly different rules. That's not true. That's like, again, empirically not true. You can go read the rules and find out that's not true. But I see your point. And I agree that we should have one extra rule, or maybe even 5 army rules per army that you can choose from. You can choose one for the battle in hand, right? So you could get like Blood Angels that are really good at deep striking, you know, death from above, that kind of thing. You could take that rule. Or you could get Blood Angels who have succumbed to the Red Thirst. So they're really good in close combat and they kind of act like corn berserkers. That kind of a thing, right? That I would agree with. Every single army in one-page rules should have a single or 5 army rules, in my opinion, that you can then choose from to decide what kind of a flavour of that faction you want to bring to the battlefield. I agree with that. You could essentially put every single unit into one giant army book and nothing would change. Personally, I would love if every faction had like 3 sub-factions just to entice specific playstyles. That's exactly what I said. Instead of it being a simple lump of good stuff, like +1 to charge on bike units, +4 inch range units on plasma weapons, or +1 armor saves for slow units. Simple stuff. I get not all these things are keyworded, but as good human beings playing a game to just have some fun, we can agree the models with bikes are bike units and guns named plasma are plasma guns. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, and I think one thing that one-page rules is good at is it really does like get rid of the dickheads very quickly, because when a game system basically says to you, don't be a dick, the people who are being dicks are ostracized, because they're the ones who are gonna say, well, technically, it's not a bike unit, that kind of stuff. They're the ones who are gonna say stuff like that, and that'll just get them thrown out anyway. I used to think that you can't do that as a game designer. I used to think that as a game designer, you have to not trust your players, But I think if you've got a robust game system, you can have a game system that is quite open-ended, as long as one of your main rules is don't be a dick, right? Because then other people can point to that and go, yes, mate, you're being a dick. You're not playing the game in the spirit it's intended, Anyway, it might be a bit too much to ask from OPR, but this would be my ideal way to play fast, fun games of simplified 40k. Also, I hate the choose 3 models to get a buff abilities instead of just a static area buff. Adds random bookkeeping into a game that otherwise is very minimalistic in every respect, only needing wound counters for the most part. I don't agree with that part, right? Because the aura also is more difficult to keep track of. What if the model moves? Do you know what I mean? You've got to measure the aura and then take note of how many models are in the aura of the ability, things like that. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you just say, yeah, these 3 models all have that ability, there's a marker on each of them, that's it. That's easier. There are certain parts to the 40k system that even one-page rules, it goes from like a 10 in complexity down to like an 8, because you can't really go down further than that. It's still a war game. This is what I mean. When people say OPR isn't a hard game to play, no, it's still a war game, dude. You still have to pay attention to what's going on, or you're going to get murked. Anyway, Scout Fruit says, I'm generally pretty apprehensive about kit bashing. Okay, but this isn't a hill I'm prepared to die on. I think a pretty overlooked element of Games Workshop models that go unappreciated is the design language they've crafted. If you look, the weapon sculpts of your units usually share some key features that exist in other factions. If you see coils on some alien gun, you think plasma. If there's a fuel canister and a bunch of exhaust holes on the barrel of another, it might be some sort of melter gun. This all does a pretty good job of telegraphing what sort of firepower the other player should expect. When somebody rolls up to the table with a third-party sculpt that looks completely foreign to the setting of 40k, I'm not sure what to anticipate and can't react accordingly. I'll admit that this is kind of a non-issue, considering you can just ask the guy what units are which and what they are packing. The steep cost of models doesn't make this argument any easier, so enjoy the hobby however you like. Just don't let me catch you with some goofy Land Raider proxy. I'm on both sides of the fence with this, okay? I think that there is a reasonable area of expectation, okay? I don't think one-page rules and model systems like third-party systems, even Minimaker, right? I don't think they give you carte blanche to just take whatever weapon you want on a model and say it's whatever you want it to be, right? I'm not that kind of guy. If you turn up with a bunch of normal Space Marines with bolters, and you say, "Oh, these are all assault Space Marines with chainswords," I'll say, "No, they're not. They're not assault intercessors because they've got bolters." I'm not doing that. I'm not playing a game where I have to mentally remember what you've decided your models are. Do you know what I mean? Bring what you have. Put effort into your models. If you want assault intercessors, build some assault intercessors or something that looks like them. Build Marines with chainswords. It's not difficult. It's really not difficult, especially in the modern world of 3D printing. It's not difficult to magnetize arms, right? And just say, oh, click one on, click one off. They're now, assault intercessors, no problem. It's not a big thing, dude. If you turn up with, 5 units of Space Marines, 2 of which are, pure, and they're all Marines with bolters, but 2 of them have chainswords. Dude, I'm not doing that. You're opening up yourself to a whole can of worms. How do I know you're not bloody cheating? How do I know which is which? Which am I attacking first? You lose track of it. It becomes less immersive. It becomes less of a game and more of a game of remembering what your opponent has. It's just, dude, I should be able to tell at a glance what your models do. That's the least expectation I have. And it's not a high bar to clear. I should literally be able to look at your army and have some idea what your models do. Scout, you're right on that. Your models should look like what they do. I agree, right? On the other side of this, though, I do think you're being a bit too partisan here, where you're saying, oh, you know, your plasma should look exactly like a plasma, and your melter should look exactly like a melter. No, dude. I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, it's very clever design choices there, but kit bashing is a thing that keeps most people in this hobby. The best kit bashers, though, they make something that looks like what it does better than Games Workshop. That's kit bashing to me, right? A lot of my models here behind me have dual swords. They have Blade Guard veterans that have 2 swords, right? They still count as having a shield because I just say they're that good swordsmen. They count as having a shield because they're blocking with their swords, right? That kind of a thing. And everybody knows that Blade Guard veterans have shields. So when somebody sees the Blade Guard veterans, they know, oh, those are Blade Guard veterans. They're pretty tough. They have shields. Blah blah blah. Right? Even though they have 2 swords, and I kit bashed them from the Games Workshop set. I didn't use any third-party bits. The Games Workshop give you the tools to create your Blade Guard veterans with dual blades. Right there. It's in the set. So I did it, right? And they look awesome. And they play really cool. So that's the kind of kit bashing I'm talking about, okay? You can do it with third-party pieces as well, but your model should look like it does what it does. So I'm saying, kit bash is the best thing. I think you're having a go at kit bashing because you've been burned by some dude getting his shoe and saying, this is my Land Raider, right, and putting it on the tabletop. Or something extreme like that when they say, oh, this Rhino is actually a Land Raider. No, it fucking isn't. No, it isn't. Because I'm not spending the entire game translating your models. I'm not doing it. This is enough mental strain as it is. I'm not doing it. Cool. Awesome. Moving on. Superheld McHammergeil says, Erebus did nothing wrong. Be happy for what he did. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Warhammer 30k and 40k. Yeah. Again, these are all quotes from. These are all quotes from Erebus that you've written here, so I'm not going to read them all. But yeah, no, I agree. I don't think people hate Erebus for the reasons you think they hate him. Alright? I'm just going to say that. People don't like Erebus because he's used as a vehicle rather than actually being a character. And he gets away with everything because the plot demands that he gets away with everything, right? Well, not the plot. Dan Abnett demands that he gets away with everything, right? Whenever something really shitty and mustache-twirlingly evil happens that doesn't need to happen, that actually makes the story worse, it's Erebus doing it, right? Every single time the author sticks his middle finger up at the audience, says, these are my characters, I'll kill them whenever I want, it's Erebus doing it. You know what I'm saying? I.e. Loken and Argel Tal, right? 2 characters everybody wanted more books from, saying, oh, dude, you want to see where this goes, you know? No, Erebus cuts that short, because you don't get nice things. Here are the rest of the 97 books of the Horus Heresy, with useless salamander models and books. Go and read those, right? This is the thing. That's why people don't like Erebus. People love to hate Erebus for being a dick. Absolutely. You know? And you know what? Being the father of 40k, I think that's enough of an accomplishment for Erebus. We loved hating him when he was that. Now people actually hate him. Yeah, that's what's called go away hate. It's not just hate of like, oh my god, that guy. You know, no, it's literally, oh my god, that guy. Go away. Right? That's it now. That's what he is now. Because he keeps being used by writers to cut stories short that are actually pretty cool because the writers want you to hate him so much. Right? They're leaning into it. Oh, hey, man, don't you hate him so much? No, mate. You can't fucking write. That's the issue here, Dan Abnett. You can't write. You can't write. You wrote several decent books back in the day that were surprisingly good because they were Warhammer books. But if you wrote Eisenhorn and you put it out onto the general sci-fi sphere of different novels that are out there, if you went up against people like Philip K. Dick, and you went up against Ian M. Banks and people like that, they would shit all over you, my friend. You're not a good writer in the grand scheme of things. You're a decent Warhammer writer, but those aren't the same things. I'm sorry, that's the truth. That's the truth. Go read The Gunslinger by Stephen King, then read me a Dan Abnett book, and you tell me which one is a better writer. And by the way, Stephen King wrote that when he was in his 20s, and he was high most of the time. Dude, you're a hack. You're a hack who writes for Warhammer. You used people... It's so lazy, the way Erebus is used. That's why people fucking hate him. It's so lazy. Oh, he did a bad thing again. Oh, that character you like is dead. And it's Erebus who did it. Don't you hate him? Dude, I can see what you're doing. I don't like... You think you're smart enough to manipulate me as a reader, and you're fucking not, Dan Abnett. You're a dickhead. You got no idea how to manipulate your readers into feeling anything. This is the same reason why George Martin's books fell off. Very same reason. Whenever you like a character in George Martin's books later on, you know they're dead. You know they're dead. You went back to the well again and again and again and again. Ooh, they might die. George, I know they're going to die. You're a dickhead. You don't want us to have nice things. I know they're going to die. Why should I get invested in this? Whenever Erebus is around a character who's pretty cool, the character's dead. That's why people don't like Erebus, super held. Right? That's why they don't like Erebus. I loved Erebus as the father of 30k and 40k. I loved him in the early Horus Heresy books. That's when Dan Abnett was, doing some pretty decent work with Erebus. I was thinking, cool. If Erebus gets his own standalone novels now, that's going to be awesome. I'm going to love that, right? No. Erebus interjects himself into stories that aren't his and ruins them because the author's sticking his middle finger up at the audience and trying to get you to hate Erebus. Erebus doesn't have, heat. People don't care about Erebus. People want him to go away. They don't care about Erebus. Alright? I'm going to bring up a tangent. Dominic Mysterio. Bet you didn't see that coming, did you? Right? Dominic Mysterio. Back in the day, in wrestling, Dominic Mysterio had what I like to call go-away heat. It wasn't heat as in, oh, we love hating this guy. It was, oh my god, get him off my television, he's so annoying. Heat. Right? Until he started to lean into how dastardly he was, and then started to interject some human elements into him. He got... he started to doubt himself. He started to get down on himself. He started to back up his friends. He started to do things that, hey, any normal dude would do. As in, get his leg over with Liv Morgan. Things like that. You'd be like, yeah, I can see a guy doing that, sorry, Liv Morgan is hotter than Rhea Ripley. Shut up, right? So, he does all that stuff. And eventually people start to cheer. And he wins the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania. And they expect... You can tell the commentators expected people to boo. They cheered. They cheered this guy, this bad guy. Because they love hating him. They want to see more of him. He went from having go-away heat and became more human, more believable as a character. And he got actual heat. People hated him, but they loved to hate him, so they cheered when he won. And he won fair and square, and they cheered. And you could tell it meant so much to him as well. Dude was literally nearly crying, right? Dominic Mysterio did the reverse Erebus. Erebus was the reverse. He started off being really loved. People loved to hate him. And then he ended up, through Dan Abnett and his choices as a writer, quote-unquote, he ended up being go away. Go away, Erebus. That's all I'll say. So you're wrong, Superheld. You're wrong. Right? Anyway. Nordemp says, models are going in the wrong direction. Whilst new models look great and are genuinely beautiful, for the most part, they have too many details which are too tedious to paint. Nothing kills my painting mood more than realising a relatively simple model requires 20 paints just to get to tabletop standard. This applies especially to the rank and file troops. This one Has the most likes so far. So, I get you, man. I get you. I'm with you on this. As a mostly Space Marine player, I don't really come across this a lot, right? I think Space Marines are in a really nice place in terms of if you get 10 Primara Space Marines, there's a few details there, but they're very easy, quick to paint. You know, you can get a box of 10 done in a night or two. If you know what you're doing, right? If you know what your colour scheme is, and you know how to do your colour scheme, you can do a box of 10 in about 2 days, 2 nights, right? If you really focus. But you look at like Skaven, you look at Eldar, you look at Imperial Guard, oh my god. You look at Imperial Guard, there's like 50 in a squad sometimes, you're like, oh my god. Yeah, I understand your pain, dude. I understand your pain. Big Texas says, Warhammer 40k isn't that expensive. Okay. I've collected other collector hobbies, and Warhammer is on the low end of hobbies. Lego, for example, I can build an entire 2,000 point army for the price of one Lego Star Wars set, and that's not an exaggeration. The best part about Warhammer is that if it's too expensive for you, then once you have your first army, you can pretty much stop spending money. While it's definitely a luxury hobby, I think people are slightly out of touch in comparison to other hobbies. Okay. I don't agree. And there's a few good reasons for that, right? So the first is inflation, okay? It's inflation, and it's the cost of what things cost to make. Hang on, I'm going to test that. I'm going to test that theory, right? Lego Star Wars set. Let's have a look. I'm going to test that theory. I don't think that's true. Yeah, it's not true. Like, it's literally not true. Alright, so, you know, a Star Wars boarding the Tatooine interactive building toy, right? With loads of parts to it, it's £37. Okay? 37 quid. And there's quite a lot of stuff in there as well. You know? A Starfighter Microfighter collectible, 12 quid. Yeah, can you get a 40k vehicle for 12 quid? I'm serious. Like, if you can, then please let me know. I don't think you can. You know, the biggest, most expensive one I'm seeing here is a Star Wars The Dark Falcon play and display building toy with spring-loaded shooters. That's cool. Cannons. I might have to get this. Cannons and 6 minifigures. That's 109 quid. That's a lot of money, right? Well, that's a massive, massive set. It's huge. You know what I'm saying? Now the vehicles, I know what you're saying. These are expensive. These are near 40k standard. But the thing is, here's the thing, dude. What that just proved there is that 40k isn't less expensive than these other things. You know what I mean? It isn't. It's the same price, if not more expensive. So we've taken your point there, and anyone can do this. By the way, just Google it. Just Google how much these things cost. Right? I would say Lego and 40k are on the same bandwidth of expensiveness. You tried to make out like that Lego's more expensive than 40k. It's not. We're on the same level around, and I think I'm being kind saying that as well. They're on the same level. Point is, dude, we're not talking about Lego. This isn't a channel that's about Lego. I think they're overpriced too, but I don't collect Lego. It's not my problem, right? I'm talking about Warhammer. Warhammer is overly expensive for what it is. Warhammer is way overpriced for the materials, the manufacturing process, the process of getting it into your hands. Okay? They're making something like a 400, 500% profit on every single thing they sell. You're telling me that that's reasonable? I think you're wrong. And I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. Just very simple. I just think that's wrong. I don't think... By the way, dude, don't lie. Okay? You cannot get a 2,000 point army straight from Games Workshop for the price of one Lego Star Wars set. That is a straight exaggeration. You're saying that's not an exaggeration. It literally is. I've literally just seen it with my own eyes. Right? Like, large Lego Star Wars set. Let's see what that is. Lego Star Wars set. Large Lego Star Wars set. Okay. The largest I'm seeing, 169 quid for a load of things. I'm not going to call them models, you know what I mean? 169, maybe? Maybe 150, right? Yeah? If you want to build a massive Kylo Ren shuttle, which is like one of the biggest things they do apparently, that's 200 quid. So the biggest thing I can see is 200 quid. The most expensive thing I can see. Okay? Everything else is in the £50 range. Like everything else in the 50 quid range. Thereabouts. Alright? And you know full well, I don't even need to Google it, you know what the most expensive sets of 40k are, right? They're way above this. They're not 200 quid, mate. They're above that, right? The big old box sets, the big Horus Heresy box sets, right? They're at least on par with this. And I would say the main things you need to make a 40k army, okay, are more expensive than what you need to make Lego Star Wars. Lego Star Wars, remember, with Lego Star Wars, with Lego itself, you're getting one thing because you want to build it. You're not collecting an army of Lego Star Wars. You're getting one thing because you think it's cool to build and have on your shelf. With 40k, you need that 2,000 point army to play the game properly. And a 2,000 point army costs way more than one Lego Star Wars set. Way more. I'm talking, 2 or 3 times more. A 2,000 point army is going to run you around 500 quid. Buying it from Games Workshop. 500 quid. One Lego Star Wars set, even the biggest one, about 200 quid. Your point doesn't add up, man. Your point doesn't add up. I respect what you're trying to say. And do you know what you could have said? PC building. Hey, do you guys play on your PCs? Do you like your PCs? Well, how much money do you spend on those? Yeah, thousands and thousands of pounds. But you can't buy models? That would have been more of a reasonable take. But even then, when you've got your PC, it pays for itself. You know what I mean? Because you've got thousands and thousands of hours of entertainment out of this thing. Dude, I make my living on my PC. It's paid for itself several times over. My models don't pay for themselves. Do you know what I mean? So even then, yeah, and your car. My manager used to say this all the time. Well, guys who like to work on their cars, they spend a lot of money on their cars, do they not? Yeah, but then they drive the car. You fucking moron. They drive the car to work. They impress ladies with the car. Can you drive your models to work? Can you impress ladies with your models? Normal ladies, I mean. Probably not. This is what I mean, dude. Like, the argument just falls apart. Warhammer 40k is the most expensive hobby because it gets you. It imprisons you. It says, listen, if you want to do this properly, you've got to get that 2,000 point army. The amount of hobby nightmares I read where they chase that tail of that comet, the 2,000 point army, because they want to have an army, and it costs them hundreds and 500 to 600, 700 pounds, and that's if you're not living in Australia. Every Australian big Texas is looking at your point and scoffing into their cornflakes. No, it's not cornflakes, is it? They're scoffing into their beer, right? Anyway, thank you for writing that in. You definitely got a lot of discussion out of me. I didn't mean to say you were lying before, by the way. I just think you're wrong. So apologies. You're not lying. You're just misinformed there. I think that's a bad take. But anyway, moving on. DeClaptain says that YouTubers fully helped kill the hobby while glazing Games Workshop for years in the hopes they would be noticed by Games Workshop, but now act like they had no part in it and whine about Games Workshop a lot. Alright, I hope you're not talking about me, young man, because I've always been... I was on this side of the fence from the beginning. So, I hope you're not talking about me. No, I've always been consumer-faced. I've always been... not anti-Games Workshop, but I've always been like, listen, I don't trust these people. Anyone who's watched the channel for a long time will know why I don't trust these people. I don't like these people, for the most part, right? Very good people work there. The vast majority of people who work there are good, but most people that you deal with on a daily basis in retail and who adjudicate the prices and what goes where are not good people. Just saying. Like, personal experience. Not good people. So, you know, it ain't me. But I know certain YouTubers that you're talking about. So I have to take a sip of tea there. I know certain YouTubers that you're talking about. Now, will I name them? No. No. In fact, I have named them in the past. People who I think, yeah, you're on the bandwagon now, aren't you? Right? When Daddy turned off the money tap, now they're a problem, right? You all know who I mean. You know who I mean. You know? This is why I don't have a go at... Well, do you know what? I had a go at Valra once. Because he made a point that I didn't agree with. And I was like, well, hang on a minute. That was pretty hypocritical. Because you said something else the other week. And now it's changed all of a sudden. And I stand by that as well. He said that's not what he was doing. That's fine. But I stand by what I said. Like, I categorically... The fucking evidence is right there. It's right there. Like, I looked at one video one week, and then another video the other week, and said, those two do not match up. Which is your opinion, dude? Right, that kind of a thing. And we got that. So, it is what it is. It is what it is. But, like, I will generally stick up for him, in general, because I believe a lot of what he says comes from a place of, how do I put it? Honesty, right? He says what he honestly thinks and feels. Sometimes that can lead to contradictions, of course. But I still respect somebody who actually says, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. And for all the people who say that Valrax is shill, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You have no clue what you're talking about. That I've seen that guy lambast Games Workshop in the past. He has put them right in the crosshairs and said, this isn't good enough. In the past. But because he celebrates things that he likes, people think he's a shill. He's not. There are far worse people out there. I know a lot of you thought of Valrak when I was talking about that before. You're wrong. Right? I will die on this hill, and until he changes my mind, Valrak is not a shill. I am literally Gnaeus Pompey Magnus, standing in front of the Senate, you know. Caesar is a faithful son of Rome. Until anybody proves that he is not, I will never betray him. And then all the Senate's like, yay! You know. That's same thing with Valrak, right? He's not a shill. Not a shill. Certified, no, not shill. Yeah. Again, positivity can be annoying. There have been certain Valrak videos I have to turn off, because I'm just like, dude, shut up. I love you, man, but shut up. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my god, these are awesome. Okay, alright. I can't match his energy sometimes. I'm like, oh god. You know. But then there are some times where I'm like, actually, this is really cool. I like this. And I get why people like him. Because he's a cool guy. And, you know. But there are other YouTubers that definitely fit the mold. The Claptain definitely do. Anyway. Matthew Tucker says, my hot take is that Leland Russ actually understood Magnus's position at the end of the burning of Prospero. He may have hated him, but understood why he did what he did. It is covered in the short story, Parting of the Ways, when seeing his legion, what was left of them, begin to fight amongst themselves at the Fang. He did nothing, until deciding enough was enough, then declaring the advent of the Wolf Time, taking his 13th Great Company with him into the warp. Okay. Fine. I'm not a big wolf guy, but that sounds... that's a decent take. Alfarius says, the 20th says, we need fewer armies until everybody has an expanded model line. Far too many are only rocking a handful of datasheets. And we need rules to drop early in an edition, if not all at once. And then you can make tweaks if you want. I'm fine playing my Astartes, loyal or otherwise, but too many players go entire editions with no rules whatsoever. I agree. Yeah. I mean, they can't just nuke armies, because then you're taking away people's options, and people will really boil their piss, can you imagine? Because, yeah, we're taking away entire armies because we need to focus on armies that, you know, sell. That would be... like, Alpharis, they literally cannot do that. Alright? They literally cannot do that. But I agree with the sentiment. I think, honestly, And rather than nuking entire factions, they should instead nuke the every couple of years you bring out a new edition thing. I think the 10th edition was a real... The reason why I hate it so much is that I thought it was a really big chance for a big reset, right? To establish a Warhammer 40,000 rule set that was robust enough to last 5 to 10 years. And in those 5 to 10 years, you make sure everybody has a full model line, everybody has a full codex, and then you go from there, right? And you say, right, then we're doing another edition, 11th edition, and it's going to have, you know, all of the dudes are going to come out with it and things like that. That could have been a great reset for the entire thing. And they didn't do that. They carried on doing what they always do, nickel and dime their audience for everything that it's fucking worth, and then wonder why they have a hobby of diminishing returns in terms of money. Games Workshop will complain about that non-stop, right? Things are getting more expensive, but our revenue is dropping ever so slightly every year. Yeah, dude, that's your fault. That's your fault. The fans have told you what they wanted. This is capitalism, dude. If your customers say we want X and you give them Y, they're allowed to walk away. That's meritocracy, man. That's what it is. And another company will step in and do what you should be doing, you know? I think I'm going to leave it there for now. And then I'm going to come back with some more of these next time because we're already getting on. Do you know what? I'll read a few more because this might be a 3-parter. Because we're still getting more in now. All right. Arabus says, Games Workshop should do advertising. As I wish as a kid I learned of Warhammer, but I only learned about Warhammer due to stumbling across a store in 2022 when I was 20. Before then, I had never seen any advertisements or any word about it, and it would have been great to learn about it when I was younger. I feel like a lot of people will be brought into the hobby if Warhammer was shown more than either word of mouth or stumbling across it did. Okay, Games Workshop will never do advertisements. Again, anyway. The reason I was told when I was there, and I asked this question, because it is a very puzzling phenomenon, it's because they have a bespoke product and they shouldn't need to advertise. Games Workshop will not do advertisements because there is an inbuilt arrogance to their brand and their models and their products. They say, no, by word of mouth, all we need is our stores. All we need is our brand, and that will get people in. The minute we do television advertisements, we become like every other brand out there, and we don't want that. The same thing goes for sales. The reason why Games Workshop has never produced a sale once in its life, as in lowering its prices for a limited amount of time, is because that would make them like every other product on the high street, and they don't want that. Games Workshop saw... I will... Those of you who know the lore of the channel will know what I'm saying. Do any of you remember who Games Workshop saw as their main competition on the high street when I was working there? Do any of you remember that? Spam it in the chat if you do. I will be here for the chat. What store on the British High Street did Games Workshop see as their main source of competition? I'll give me a few more seconds. I've said it before, a few times. This was brought up to me in several meetings. Once with my manager, and a bunch of other times with my trainer, and then at a retail workshop, so I know it's something that was ingrained. Alright? American people, I want you to Google the store Ann Summers. Yeah, it's a sex toy and lingerie store. They were the competition for Games Workshop on the high street. Why? Because they had amazing customer service and they didn't advertise. They relied on the strength of their brand. They relied on word of mouth. Right? And they made bank. They did very well because their staff were amazingly trained and knew exactly what to do, how to talk to people, how to make people feel comfortable about this thing that they might be embarrassed by. Right? Does it ring any bells? It should do. Games Workshop and Summers were fighting in every single city, neck and neck for customer service awards. All the time. So Games Workshop weren't even looking at it from a monetary standpoint. They were looking at it from a prestige standpoint. We're better than them. Right? Because Games Workshop had no competition on the high street, let's be honest, in terms of selling models. So they found them in Ann Summers. Right? And it was all customer service based. It was all getting people to buy things that they're embarrassed about buying. It was all, we're a prestige product. That's what Ann Summers would say. We're a prestige product. We don't need to advertise. We're prestige. We don't need to do sales. We're a prestige product. You should want to pay top dollar for what we offer because we're best in class. And that's exactly how Games Workshop felt and still feel. I don't know if that's what Ann Summers still do. They may be different now, but Games Workshop were exactly the same then, and they're exactly the same now. They don't advertise because they're a prestige product, and they don't think they need to. And there I will leave it, because we're getting towards an hour in, so I need to upload this, because if I go any further, dudes, like, this is not going to upload in time, because it's a big file. So, I will finish it there. This may be a 3-parter, but we've had some amazing hot takes here so far, and they only get hotter from here. Oh, yes. So, I will speak to you for some more hot takes next Tuesday, and on Thursday, we'll be back on another 40k rant with a big old rantage by the guys at Grimdark Therapy. I will be joining. I am also a part of that. I will be there. And we're going to be discussing the pitfalls of 40k going mainstream. You've heard me talk about that. If you want to hear Outer Circle and what the 40k talk about it, that's the place to do it. I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.